I'm Alex, and welcome to Mind Life Weekly. If you're new to this channel, feel free to subscribe for simple psychology for life. Today, you will learn how to tune your mind in achieving success by adopting a winning mindset. Now, let's begin. The positive attitude. All of us have heard phrases like businessmen and scientists who are smart people or athletes being headstrong. Just take a pause and think of these words: smart, genius, headstrong. How are these words connected? It's someone's ability to have a mental attitude that's strong and positive. Because successful people have one common point of convergence. All of them think big. Their minds work at a different frequency than the rest of the world. Beautiful minds breed exceptional ideas for them. But here's a friendly tip. You can learn to think like these giants we talked about. Interested? Here's a genius name for you: Charles Darwin. His theory of evolution says all human beings have the same instincts because all of us have evolved similarly. But if we have the same anatomy and physiology as the geniuses and entrepreneurs, why aren't we like them? That's because we have not learned to use our minds the way as they have. To be able to unleash the power of the brain, it has to be tamed and trained to think in a certain way. Only a disciplined and organized mind generates ideas that lead to a healthy, wealthy, and happy life. Now, you might be thinking, nobody is perfect. Evolution or no evolution, everyone is bound to make mistakes. And yes, you are right. That's the whole point. Successful people are as prone to imperfections as we all are, and yet they are resilient for their passion like nobody else. Business tycoons, athletes, and scientists remain optimistic in life and loyal to their goals. This positive mental attitude acts as a shield for them. The resilience comes from this optimism and positive mind, and this mental capacity will pass the test of time with flying colours. Life will test the brilliant and ordinary alike. It's the positivity that separates the successful from the rest. You must have heard, when life throws you lemons, make lemonade. That's the code successful people live by. They face both success and failure with dignity. The key difference between a successful person and an ordinary one is that a successful person adds their mistakes and failures to their portfolio and moves on. So you see, difficult times are not a problem. It's what we do, how we carry ourselves, and the way we react that matters. Now, in case you're wondering why this attitude is necessary and why you should spend your time chasing positivity, I have a counter question for you. What's the alternative? Take a moment and imagine all the alternatives of a positive mindset: pessimism, negativity, and self-loathing. Those are the alternatives if you do not invest in adopting a positive mental attitude. As Jordan B. Peterson wrote in his book, 12 Rules of Life, that humans are by nature self-loathing creatures. Anything that enhances that takes away from a positive attitude and will drive that person closer to their self-hating side. What happens next is that such people become too critical of themselves. They lose all hope and confidence. There comes a time when they start to project their negativity onto others and become critical of them too. Creating a version of perceived reality where anyone can be left to feel hopeless. And when asked about this attitude, they will defend their views by labeling them as being realistic. Truth be told, their attitude has less to do with realism and more to do with their own fears and prejudice. The first flight. We fly in planes so often that we do not give it a second thought. But there was a time when people thought of it as being impossible. The year was 1903 when two brothers with wild dreams were trying to beat all odds and achieve their goal. The Wright Brothers did not stop to listen to what the critics had to say. As the famous adage states, where attention goes, energy follows. And the Wright Brothers proved that principle to be right. With focus and energy, they were able to fly the first ever airplane. The lesson from their game-changing vision is never stop dreaming big. What may seem impossible today can be routine tomorrow. The bottom line is pay attention to your dreams, focus and gather all the energy to pursue them. You might wonder where this energy comes from. Well, it comes from both within and without. Psychological energy is unleashed when we train our brain to focus on our goal. Focus sends signals to our brain that accepting failure is only one way of looking at it. When our brain receives that same signal over and over again, it starts lighting up neurons that may have a solution for our goals and any obstacles in the way. On the contrary, if we approach the same goals and their problems casually, then we are rewiring our brain to focus on what can't be done. This is how our minds work. If we learn to train them, we can learn to live with dignity, that circumstances do not matter if the mind knows how to correctly respond to them. However, you should not make the mistake of thinking you train your brain in avoiding problems, as life problems will come knocking on your door as long as you are alive. When we refer to a positive mind, we are referring to a mind so prudent and realistic it actually takes the problems into account, then searches for solutions. You can appreciate the problem, identify the seriousness of the issue, then become curious on how you will resolve it. And that is the difference between an ordinary and an extraordinary mind. While we are talking about positivity and optimism, let's introduce you to another optimist of 18th century. Pessimism versus optimism. Dr. Edward Jenner, a scientist who was hundreds of years ahead of his time, helped eradicate smallpox from the world by developing the smallpox vaccine. Smallpox was the deadliest disease of the 18th century. It killed 30% of its victims. There came a time when scientists and mystics alike thought it impossible to get rid of this menace. So, how did Dr. Jenner make people believe in his theory? Well, his path was not as simple as it seemed. He believed that people who had cowpox were immune to smallpox, and their blood could help create a vaccine for the relatively deadlier smallpox. People around Jenner mocked him for this bizarre idea. They even labelled him as a magician and prodigy of Satan himself. It seems pretty common sense to us today, but no one believed Jenner 200 years ago. But Dr. Jenner remained focused and steady, thinking positively and eventually rising to the occasion. In 1796, his smallpox vaccine was ready to use. In the following 2 centuries, Jenner's vaccine did wonders, and the World Health Organization announced the official eradication of smallpox in 1980. That is the power of a positive and optimistic mind. Then, over 2,000 years ago, there was a Greek orator named Demosthenes who had a bad stutter. With his stutter, he dreamt big. At his first speech, he was shouted at from the audience. "Draw the air into your lungs, boy, not into your brains." An ordinary person could have decided to quit right there and then. But Demosthenes did something amazing that made him one of the greatest orators of Greek history. He would visit the beach daily, put some stones in his mouth and a knife between his teeth. Then he would shout at the sun. He did it for more than 10 years and eventually overcame his stutter. Starting from the 20th century, then going as far back as 2,000 years, concluding that all the brilliant minds had kept their steady focus on their goals. Now, let's imagine for a moment what this world would look like without the optimism and mental attitude of these men. We would be living in a world where, when struck by a deadly disease, people would try to escape from it. By using same old medieval conveyance, horses and carts, and not having the ability to explain to each other what had actually struck them because they would not know how to communicate effectively. Positive attitude not only benefits the person who wears it, but it also benefits the world at large. Some people might say that optimism blurs the lines between reality and delusions. These critics argue that a positive mental attitude does not let us understand the world as it is. Rather, it makes us imagine the world as it ought to be. The argument seems to hold water, but it does not. First of all, these critics confuse optimism with wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is when a pigeon encounters a cat, closes its eyes, and wishes the cat is no longer there. Optimism is when that same pigeon accepts the situation and the cat as it is, indeed a real cat. However, it can escape the situation if it decides to fly away. The second reason why this criticism is not valid is because the alternative to optimism is far scarier. Even if you don't succeed, failure will add to your portfolio of life experiences, an experience that provides insight on how to succeed next time. So take a moment and decide from the following. Do you want to truly fail by resorting to pessimism and get nothing at all? Or fail with optimism and take valuable lessons for life. The lesson of accidents and failures. Up to this point, you might be thinking, what about shortcuts? What about the accidents that result in great things? To address this confusion, let's dig a little deeper into the issue, because what looks like an accident from the surface might be a lot more than just that. To analyze this, let's go back in time to the First World War. Amid death and destruction, one great mind was spending many nights in his lab trying to find a solution for infections that killed thousands of soldiers. Worried that the antiseptics used at the time were not effective against deep wounded infections, focusing on his goal to find a solution, exhausting all energies he had on his mission. Then, one morning, to put it in his own words, "When I woke up just after dawn on September 28, 1928, I certainly didn't plan to revolutionize all medicine by discovering the world's first antibiotic or bacteria killer. But I suppose that is exactly what I did." These are the words of Dr. Alexander Fleming about his discovery of penicillin. He would later say, "I did not invent penicillin. Nature did that. I only discovered it by accident." You see, he accidentally found one of his bacterial colonies was being eaten up by something. He could have resigned with all hope lost and that his experiment had failed. But he did not. Instead of sinking in disappointment and pessimism, instead of throwing his petri dish out of the window, his mind started working towards finding reasons behind the failure, and made the discovery that mold was destroying his bacteria, and that mold would become the world's first ever antibiotic, penicillin. So, Dr. Fleming is a perfect textbook example of hope, optimism, and adopting a strong mental attitude. And his findings would go on to save millions of lives in days that followed due to that mindset. Now, these individuals are just a few examples, but history would tell us there are many more who lived by these bold principles. And for those that do, often make great discoveries and leave us with lasting legacies. After all, as the ancient Latin proverb states, audentes fortuna juvat, which translates to, fortune favours the bold. So there you have it. People who have succeeded against all odds by adopting a winning mindset. A positive mental attitude prepares your mind to start looking for solutions and realising that, much like Dr. Fleming and countless others, impossible inventions and discoveries are often made after catastrophic failures. As always, thank you for watching Mind Life Weekly. Give us a thumbs up, share this video, and be sure to subscribe, because more fresh and exciting content is on the way.